What's up, everybody, and welcome to this week's Top 3. Today we're checking out 3 of the hottest and most recent releases in the playing card community from some of the greatest designers out there. And make sure to stick around to the end of the episode for a very special mystery deck giveaway this week. I know I'm really excited about these, Steve. How about you?
I am super excited. We have a lot of shimmer going on, so I'm excited to dive into it.
These are hands down some beautiful decks. I'm really interested to see what everyone thinks about these 3, what their top 3 is in the mix of it all. But I think the order we picked this week, I'm really excited for. I think it does justice to all of these, and dude, number 1 is just amazing.
Yeah, I am a big fan of all 3 of these decks, but number 1 is definitely off the
Let's
hook.
dive into it, dude. Coming in at number 3 this week, we have the Republic playing cards from Uusi Design. This deck is printed by Expert Playing Card Company on an unknown stock and is part of a 1,000 deck print run. It retails for $30.
Let's see it.
Yeah. So I gotta say, man, this deck is absolutely beautiful. The intricacy of that foil is just breathtaking. The artistic style, obviously Uusi, well known in the collectors community, does a phenomenal job. You can see this really cool embossing and foil around the entirety of the tuck. The Uusi ad copy at the bottom of the deck there with their site and all of their little information. Dude, I absolutely just love this. It reminds me of like a very ancient Greece, Roman kind of style, maybe that time period, maybe even a little bit before. But this thing is fire.
Yeah, I mean, that spot gold ink on there is amazing.
Yeah, really cool back design. Very much kind of reminds me of the top of like an Ionic column. Very Greek styling to it. Very simple though as well. One of the decks that actually reminds me of is like the old school, like turn of the century Delan's decks. But really love this full bleed design. A lot of energy to it, a lot of visual appeal. Obviously being full bleed, it fans like a dream. Looks beautiful, and being Expert stock, it honestly just handles great as well. Expert has really come a long way in their handling. You have 2 pretty much reversed jokers, both in color and direction, and then this really, really beautiful ace of spades here with what looks like either a heron or a stork or some sort of like long leg water bird. Very cool in the Uusi style. You can not only tell that the paper color itself is actually pretty unique, a little bit of an off-white, but all of the pips and indices themselves are redone and redrawn here. Then you have these just like intense court cards. It almost reminds me of like Mesopotamian art also, now that I'm looking at it. You have very unique monotone court cards here, which actually work great with it. Like I said, it has that kind of old school pottery vibe to it. So, really like the intricacy.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something I'd see in a museum, like statues.
Yeah, dude, without a doubt. It reminds me very much of that kind of museum quality. And that's something that we see with a lot of the Uusi decks. They're very much like old world artistic, which I love with their decks. The one thing I would love to see with this, and honestly, as much as I enjoy these monotone courts, a little bit of color just to provide a flash of contrast, even if it was something small, I think would have put it a little bit over the top here for me. But all things considered, absolutely love the work they do here. These pips and indices are really fun. They're a little bit larger than usual on the main pips there, which I think looks great, but they just blend so cleanly.
Yeah, I really love how each pip has its own design, and it's definitely not uniform throughout the whole thing.
It's funny though too, and the one thing that always stands out to me is for Uusi being such a artistic design, I almost wish they would go with the full-size central pips on the aces, because it just gives them more canvas space, and honestly, if anyone deserves it, it's them.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, the only one thing I would like to see is the price drop a little bit on these decks.
Yes.
$30 is a bit steep.
Especially for what would, all things considered, be a relatively standard deck there, in the sense of no foil or any sort of like added value to the cards themselves other than the artwork. Obviously, they are collector's decks and they are art decks. People love the Uusi brand, but yeah, $30 is a little pricey for what I would consider a relatively standard deck. Seeing that on Kickstarter, that would be a $20, $21 deck max on my end.
Yeah, I totally agree.
But definitely deserving of a spot in the top 3 this week. Steve, why don't you tell us what's coming in at number 2 this week, man?
Number 2 is a very fun deck. Coming in is the King Arthur deck from Kingstar. It is a print run of 3288. I'm not sure what that number means, but 3288 it is. It retails for $35. It is printed by Kingstar, and we have an unknown stock.
Nice, man. Let's check this thing out.
I absolutely love Kingstar's tucks. They always do beautiful tucks. They have their own style of tuck design. You know, it's kind of like two tucks in
Yeah.
one. You have the ad copy on the bottom with that nice 3288 number. You have gold holographic foil that kind of covers the entire tuck box, which I thought was beautiful.
Looks so beautiful.
Yeah, and then you have your King Arthur Excalibur sword.
Nice.
Are you a big King Arthur
I'm
fan?
a fan of the whole King Arthur like mythos. I've never been like so ingrained in it that I could tell you, you know, all the knights and all that stuff, but I've always digged the story.
Yeah, this back design is beautiful. It kind of reminds me of a shield in a
So
way.
I think the
kind of
center circle, I think it's actually supposed to represent the round table.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, because if you think
Okay.
about it, each of those little points would be like one of the knights of the round table potentially.
Yeah, spot on. Good call. This deck is beautiful, dude. It is absolutely beautiful. It handles perfectly. You know, being Kingstar, they definitely are printing amazing decks. And they always have these random ad cards in there. You know, this is kind of the image that's on the front or the back of the box, which is kind of like an ad card. And then they always throw in these two, I guess you can call them jokers. You know, they were kind of are so random. You know, sometimes they even have jokers, but this deck doesn't have jokers.
Very
Those
like
two
anime
cards.
style.
Yeah, that is definitely their style, you know, of design.
Yeah.
As you can see, it does have pretty much the same background on all the face cards. The pips are all custom, as well as these court cards. One thing I did find to be a problem for me was the court cards were kind of hard to see. They're a little muddled. I don't know if you noticed that, but I can't read the font either that much.
Yeah, it looks like they really went for very dark colors on the central figures, and it kind of loses some of the contrast and some of the depth to it because of that.
Yeah, and the font was just really difficult for me to read. I did get Lancelot on one of them, but you know, some of the other ones were a little
Percival,
difficult to read. Yeah, but they are really cool. I mean, beautifully designed. The holographic gold foil on these cards are just beautiful.
I really like the color choices they went with too, with the traditional black suits being outlined in this kind of like aqua teal, and the red being more of like a pinkish red. It looks really good.
Yeah, and I love how the gold foil just kind of cuts through those big central pips of the aces.
They really do some fun artwork, especially if you're into that kind of like anime-esque style. They do a spectacular job with it. All of the decks kind of focus around that similar artwork style, which I think is becoming their brand, which I think is great. But it's interesting to see how they tie that into King Arthur.
Yeah, you know what I'd really love to see? I would love to see them do kind of like a collector's deck like this, where you have a beautiful, detailed, intricate back design with, you know, custom court cards, but, you know, a little more standard.
Yeah, that would be really interesting to see. I think they could do a phenomenal job with it, especially if they bring their unique tuck styling and the foil usage to it. They could really make a fun deck.
Yeah, I love how that Excalibur sword just kind of slides in that die cut.
And again, though, this one coming in with foil and everything at that $35 price point makes sense. You know, it's a foil deck. You have a lot to it. You have dual tucks there. There's added value to that. Still an interesting price point, but love to see what they bring out, man. I think they always come out with very eye-catching and vibrant decks.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And their decks handle awesome.
Which honestly surprised me out of the box. For a newcomer to the game, they've been printing very good handling decks basically from day one.
Yeah, and with foil too. It's crazy.
It really is. So, man, you ready for the #1 spot this week?
Dude, I'm excited. Number one, let's hear
This
it.
is going to be a good one. This week's #1 deck is the NPCCD 2020 Hindsight Deck Destruction Edition. This deck is printed by Expert Playing Card Company on an unknown stock and is part of a 666 deck print run and retails for $50. Now, obviously, a 666 print run really fits well with the theme of this. So let's check this thing out, and we can talk about all of the fun and energetic dark energy coming out of this deck here. Dude, I gotta say, first off, Alex Chin does amazing work with his decks. He drops only a couple a year, but every time he drops one, they're just bangers. You can see with this here, he's tied into the whole idea that he always goes with of decks that are in non-traditionally opening tucks. So you have kind of a book style tuck here, like an accordion book almost, with these beautiful ancient Greek reliefs around the entire side. And for anyone who doesn't know, this deck is kind of built around the mythology of Pandora's box, hence the 666 print run and the whole styling of it. So this deck and tuck are meant to be a box and kind of the inner evilness, we'll say, of Pandora's box there. So absolutely beautiful, beautiful blue foiling on the back with that really, really eye-catching blue gilding on the sides. I do like that they put the punches on the side of the tuck so you can see the gilding through it. But even being gilded, this thing handles great. Full bleed, so the fanning looks beautiful as well.
Yeah, dude, you know I had to go with the blue.
Dude, and Expert really does a really great job with their handling these days. I think they've really made it so that the decks themselves just feel good almost immediately. And then getting into Alex Chin's style here. He has such detailed, in-depth, and really intricate styling to his decks. So these almost remind me of like Roman wall mosaics you'd see in some of like the old Italian ruins. Like they're just detailed, beautiful artwork here. The one thing though that does jump out to me almost immediately is the playability of this deck. Obviously not a deck most people are going to be using for playability, but that foil indices and pips on the front, while they're spectacular looking, make it very hard to read except for in the right lighting there.
Yeah, it was very hard to read.
And then you jump into these court cards here, which I gotta say, the electricity, because I see the lightning there, the electricity in the color, they're almost neon colors used throughout these court cards, and they just are so breathtaking, whether it's the greens or the blues or the reds or these kind of yellowy golds here. He adds so much emotion and feeling and like vibrancy to all of this. It's just spectacular. The one thing I love about Alex's work too is the emotion that he conveys in the court cards' faces. This deck obviously dealing with the mythology of Pandora's box and unleashing basically all the evil and horrors onto the world. You can see that fear in the court cards' faces.
Yeah, dude, it's beautiful. I mean, I can't even imagine, you know, I don't know that much about Pandora's box and the story behind it, you know, but just looking at the court cards, and you could tell it's a grim story.
Absolutely, dude. I think he did a great job with this. And the one thing, again, like, I'll say this, the same thing I said with Uusi, being such a collector's artistic deck, I wish he had done full-size central pips on the aces to give even more area for design. But this deck is just breathtakingly beautiful. It almost reminds me of, like, mosaic on all of the patterning on the back design. You can see that inner printing on the tuck just tying the story together all in itself there. It just looks beautiful. It has that Grecian feel to it. The patterning on it reminds me of old school mosaics. Like, he just did a great job with this, no question about it.
Yeah, he always goes above and beyond. The only thing I would say is, you know, as beautiful and amazing as that tuck box was, it was really difficult to, I mean, I don't want to say difficult because it wasn't difficult, but it was kind of cumbersome taking the deck out and putting it back in.
I can see that, especially because you don't have an easy way to get your finger around it. It's a very snug fit. Maybe next time around he puts a little bit of like a silk pull tab on the bottom or something to help get the deck up, something that it rests on top of. But I think all things considered, man, easily a #1 win this week for the NPCCD 2020 Hindsight deck, because those things are just spectacular. The colors are beautiful. The gilding is well done. Going with Expert on him is always a win. Expert's been just crushing the game recently, but I was excited for that one, man. It looked so beautiful.
Yeah, I like how we called it a hindsight and it was 2020.
Yes, well, I think it was super fitting. I think that's why he probably went with it. And looking at it too, you know, the story behind it as well was that Alex originally lost his laptop that had the original 2020 design. It was actually stolen from his car. And so he had to redesign the entire deck. So on so many different levels, hindsight and evil and all this plays into the 2020 theme, not just because of the pandemic, but also because of Alex's misfortune there. But pulled out a spectacular deck, no question about it. And as always, everyone's favorite part of the episode, this week's comment shout out winner is Dutch Card House Company. Make sure to check out their comment right down below. And while you're at it, make sure to leave a comment yourself down below. Let us know what your favorite deck is this week, whether it's one of our top 3 or any other deck you've recently released. One lucky winner next week will be receiving a mystery deck. So make sure to subscribe to the channel down below, as well as leaving a comment. Only subscribed users will be eligible to win that deck.